How's it going? Today I'd like to address a question that no one is asking. How does the WK180C Gen 1 compare to the Troy PAR 223, specifically in the context of three-gun, multi-gun shooting, and in Canada? So just to give a little background why someone might even consider this question. In the 2010s, the default rifle for use in three-gun here in Canada was the AR-15. It's modular, it was well priced, it was very reliable, accurate, everything that you wanted. It was great. And you could use 10-round magazines. There's a law behind that. There's a reason why. I won't get into those. Anyway, so that was the default rifle for quite some time. One of the downsides to the AR, even then, was that it was in the restricted class. And among other things, that means that it had to be registered and it could only be shot at an approved shooting range. Which, if you're shooting three-gun or any sort of competition, wasn't really a big deal because almost any competition would be shot at a approved shooting range anyway. So it wasn't really that big of a deal. Also, your pistol fell into that same restricted category, so it was all the same. It wasn't that big of a deal. But say you wanted to use that AR for other things. Maybe you wanted to use it for hunting or just plinking on either crown land or public land or your own private land. You weren't allowed to. So there were, at the time, and there still are, non-restricted options. The non-restricted category means they don't have to be registered, and you can shoot them anywhere that it's legal to discharge a firearm. Now, there were, like I said, there were semi-automatic 223 options at the time, and there still are. They were always more expensive. They were sometimes jokingly referred to as the non-restricted tax, meaning it was just more expensive to get a non-restricted semi-auto 223 than it was the AR-15. So what one company did, this was in about 2018, I believe, Kodiac Defence here in Canada, came up with the this is called the WK180C, and it is inspired by the AR-180 design. And what that allowed it to do was you could have a semi-auto 223 here in Canada, and it was non-restricted. It did not fall under a restricted category. So you could use this plinking on your farm, crown range. You could use it for coyote hunting, whatever you wanted to do with it. So they were starting to become popular at that time simply because they were non-restricted. All that changed in 2020 here in Canada when the AR-15 became prohibited, and suddenly we can't use them at all. You can't. Yeah, the short story is we can't use them anymore. They're prohibited. They're illegal. So suddenly these became much more popular, and since that time, since 2020, there's been, I want to say, a handful of companies here in Canada that have come up with non-restricted options and non-prohibited options that we could use for three-gun. So like I said, in the 2010s, the AR-15 was the default option for your rifle and three-gun. Now there really isn't a default option. Now we've got a bunch of these Canadian semi-autos. We've also got some higher-end ones like the CZ Bren, or that's the only one that's coming to mind right now. But there are others like a foreign-made semi-auto 223s that are being in use in three-gun. But this has become quite popular because they are fairly economical. They're one of the lower cost semi-auto 223s on the market here in Canada, and yeah, it's mostly for their cost and their availability, and they're illegal, so we can use them. So that's the long and the, so that's kind of the backstory to this. The pump here, on the other hand, this came out in, geez, how old is this? I think this has come out since 2010. It's a 10-year. They've been out for at least 10 years, I want to say now. I've actually never seen these in a three-gun match before, but we've always been able to use them. They've always been non-restricted, so they've always been an option. Anyway, today I would like to look at these two and just for the fun of it. So I'll start with this one. Like I said, this is the WK180C. This is the Gen 1. They've since come out with a Gen 2. It's clear. Now, so yeah, this is chambered in 223 556, 18.5-inch barrel, which here in Canada makes it non-restricted. We can take our 10-round AR. It takes AR magazines, so we can take our 10-round AR mags. What else do I want to say about it? It's about 7.2 pounds. The nice thing is you can actually put folding stocks on this because, see if I can take this apart. This AR tube is hollow. It's just so that it's compatible with AR stocks, which are very handy. But it's a completely different system. I can't remember what it's called, but it's one of those carbine length gas systems or something like that. Anyway, so it's not 100% compatible with AR barrels, but some AR handguards will work, some pistol grips will work, your buffer tubes will work, some AR triggers will work. I think they need to be modified a bit. Anyway, so that one's the semi-automatic. This one's the pump action, obviously. So this one has a 16-inch barrel. It's about 6.2 pounds. It's a full pound lighter than this one. And of course, the major difference is this one is pump action. Ha! What I meant to do is hit the slide. This is the slide release. Mag release is obviously in the same spot. Yeah, the major difference is this one is a pump action instead of a semi-auto. Put that down there for the time. And it also shares some compatibility with your ARs. You can use your AR stocks, AR pistol grips. What else? I suppose you could use an AR barrel. You would just have to plug the gas hole, because obviously there isn't a gas system in this, being a pump action, slide action, whatever you want to call it. What else would actually be? Sights. I think some triggers, muzzle devices, stuff like that. This is also in 223556. This one is a 1 in 8 twist. This one is a 1 in 7 twist. Just little minor differences there. Anyway, those are the general specs. Just to go over some pros and cons of each one of them. The obvious pro of the semi-auto is that it has a faster rate of fire. The con, at least of this particular semi-auto, like I said, there's a Gen 2 now. I've had only my experience with the Gen 1, is, let's say, it likes to break. It has certain parts, it suffers from durability issues. Some of the more common ones that I can think of off the top of my head is the piston rod will snap if it ever gets slightly out of spec. So people make sure they've got that tightened down. The charging handle, it's reciprocating, and it has a tendency to shear itself off and break off, that's the only thing that's broken so far in mine. This thing will break off. I think there's just some other minor ones, but the main one was the piston rod breaking and the charging handle shearing off. I don't know if they've fixed much of that in the Gen 2. I haven't had any experience with one. Like I said, the only thing that's broken on mine is this, and I've got somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 rounds. Probably shot half a dozen or so 3-gun matches with it. It'll also have the odd failure to feed. Maybe actually I get a double feed every now and then. But generally, it's pretty reliable, but I've had a couple double feeds. One nice thing about being in Canada is that if anything breaks, the company is Kodiac Defence is really good about getting you a new spare parts or fixing it. So at least here in Canada, the service is reasonably quick. Like when I got my bolt fixed, I sent the bolt there. They took out the old nub and sent me back with a new charging handle, no problem. So the cons are long-term durability, and the pros are faster rate of fire. And even though it does break, you can get parts reasonably easy, at least here in Canada. The pros of the Troy are it's a little lighter. This one tends to be a little front heavy. Like I said, this one's a pound heavier, and most of that weight seems to be out in front. So this one balances quite nicely right over the mag well. That one's just in front of the mag well where it bounces. What was I talking about? I've only taken this out on 1 3-gun competition so far, but just from the feel of it, it feels more durable. I don't think there's much that can break on here. I think some earlier models, the what would you call it? That thing has the piston rod up there. Whatever, there's a rod that connects from the pump into the bolt and actuates it directly. I heard on some really earlier models those had a tendency to break, but I've heard on later generations like this one's only I just bought this last fall, 2023, that they have solved that. The long-term durability is probably a pro of this over the WK. What else would be a pro? Like I said, it's lighter, a little shorter, a little easier to maneuver. Ergonomics are pretty similar. Safety's in the same spot. Other pros would be, oh, I forgot to mention, in terms of price, they're actually about the same price. Um, I hate to mention price because it's probably different at different times and different places, but they're both about, and I'm talking about the Gen 2, but in its day, the Gen 1 was the same, about 1,500 Canadian dollars, and that's generally what you'll find this for. I ended up getting this on a good sale, about 1,100 bucks, so that's why I really wanted to try it out. Obviously, the big downside is rate of fire. You're just not going to be able to go as fast as this. Maybe transitioning between different targets, you can pump it fast enough that it would be about the same. But if you're shooting at a static target at one target, clearly you're going to be able to get off double taps with a semi-auto a lot faster than you are with a slide action. Other downsides. There were some other downsides that I was thinking about with this one. Rate of fire was the big one. The pump works pretty good. I mean, without a magazine in, it cycles super smooth. No problem at all. But when you actually have rounds in there, I find that as long as you operate the slide with a bit of gusto, they'll always go in. But it is easy. I find it's much easier to short shuck this pump action than it would be, say, your average pump action shotgun. This one, you need to have consistent force. Oh, I just remembered a big downside that I discovered at my first 3-gun match with this is shooting prone. Pump actions do not lend themselves well to shooting prone. It was quite a struggle. That's the biggest advantage the semi-auto will have over your pump action is if you ever have to shoot prone. So I kind of got to practice that if I want to keep using this. In terms of accuracy, I think they're probably pretty similar. It's hard for me to say because I've never put a scope on either one of them. But for 3-gun, like I've just had the iron sights on this one, and in the past I've had my red dot sight on the WK, and I probably get 2-3 inch groups at 100 yards just using bulk 555 grain ammo, 223 ammo. So in that sense, although I get I think I would probably be able to get better groups with this one. If I got someday I'll put a scope on it and see what I can do. But with this one, I only did a couple of testings, and again, just with the open sights, I was able to get 2-3 inch groups quite easily on my first time out, which I was quite surprised. I was very pleasantly surprised with how accurate it was. So I'll have to get a scope on it and give it a try. So how do they compare when used for 3-gun here in Canada? Well, I would say the big difference is this one has a longer term durability of parts. Hopefully things won't break on this one. This one, you have an advantage in speed. Accuracy is the same. Obviously, the caliber is the same. The magazines they use is the same. A lot of parts compatibility in terms of what do you call it? Customizing them to personally customize them, about the same. So if you're looking at either of these two for 3-gun, which one should you try? Well, if you're in the States or any other country that allows them, you should get an AR-15. They're usually cheaper. They have more parts availability, more customizability, more reliable. Get an AR-15. If you're in Canada, which one should you get? You should probably get the CZ Bren 2. Right now, that seems to be if there is a default option, that's what it's moving towards. That would be the most reliable, best option we have for a semi-auto 223 in Canada. The downside is it's reasonable. It's almost twice the price of these two firearms. So that's the big downside of it. But in all seriousness, what should you pick between these two? It's whichever one you find cooler, or whatever you value more. You value the potential faster rate of fire with the semi, or the more durability of the pump action. So it's all what you want. For the time being, I'm going to move from this one to this one. I'm going to try this out for a while, probably sell this one, and if I want to get back into a semi-auto, I'll try something else. Anyway, thank you for your time. Have a good one.